On December 21st, 1988, a pivotal event in aviation history occurred when Pan Am Flight 103, a Boeing 747-121 known as the Clipper Maid of the Seas, was tragically destroyed by a terrorist bombing. The flight was en route from Frankfurt to New York City with a scheduled stopover in London. This devastating incident took place over Lockerbie, Scotland, resulting in the deaths of 270 people, 259 passengers and crew members on the aircraft, as well as 11 residents on the ground. This account examines the events leading up to the bombing, the extensive investigation that followed, the subsequent trials, and the lasting impact on global aviation security and international diplomatic relations. Passengers on Pan Am Flight 103 travelling from Frankfurt to New York arrived at Heathrow Terminal 3 on December 21, 1988 for a short scheduled stopover. All the passengers, along with their luggage, were moved to another aircraft, namely the Clipper Maid of the Seas, a Boeing 747-100 with the registration number N739PA. This aircraft had previously flown from Los Angeles to San Francisco on flight PA 124. The onward flight was piloted by Captain James B. McQuarrie, a 55-year-old veteran who had been with Pan Am since 1964. He was accompanied by First Officer Raymond R. Wagner, aged 52, and flight engineer Jerry D. Averitt, who was 46 years old. All three were highly experienced pilots with thousands of hours of flight time between them. On board were 13 cabin crew members, primarily based at Heathrow Airport, whose levels of seniority varied, ranging from 9 months to 28 years. They either lived in the London area or commuted from various locations across Europe. The aircraft was cleared for takeoff and took off from runway 27R at 1825, heading for New York's JFK Airport and then on to Detroit. At 1858, the aircraft contacted Shanwick Oceanic Area Control in Prestwick, Scotland. Captain McQuarrie stated, "Good evening, Scottish, Clipper 103. We are level at 310, to which the controller replied, 103, you are identified." At 19:01, the plane approached the Solway Firth and crossed the coast at 19:02 p.m, flying at 31,000 feet with a speed of 313 knots, 360 miles per hour. At this point, the flight was proceeding as expected. At 19:02:44, the Scottish Air Traffic Control transmitted an oceanic route clearance, but the aircraft did not respond. Shortly after, its transponder signal disappeared northeast of Kettleholm, prompting unsuccessful attempts by air traffic control to make contact. At 7:03 p.m, the Boeing 747, flying just north of the England-Scotland border, was struck by a devastating explosion that created a massive hole measuring 13 by 23 inches in the aircraft's fuselage, leading to catastrophic structural failure as the plane broke apart in mid-air and began its tragic descent toward the ground. The remnants of the aircraft crash-landed in Lockerbie, a small town in southwestern Scotland situated within the Dumfries and Galloway region. The debris fell primarily on Sherwood Crescent, resulting in the deaths of 11 local residents when the aircraft's wings and fuel tanks collided with their homes. The impact was so severe that it left a significant crater and caused considerable destruction to several nearby buildings, scattering debris across the area. All 259 passengers and crew members aboard the flight died, bringing the total number of victims to 270. The victims were from 20 different countries, highlighting the international ramifications of the disaster. News of the tragedy reverberated around the world. As details started to emerge, it was revealed that among the passengers were 35 students from Syracuse University who were returning home for Christmas after spending a semester at the university's London and European campuses. Several of the students were scheduled to connect to Pan Am Express Flight 4919 to Syracuse Hancock International Airport at JFK Airport later that evening. Many of their bodies were discovered at Rosebank Crescent, located half a mile from Sherwood Crescent. The rear fuselage of the plane, where many of the students were seated, destroyed one of the houses on Rosebank Crescent, specifically 71 Park Place, the home of Lockerbie resident Ella Ramsden, who survived the incident. The bodies of 2 of these students were never recovered. The captain, first officer, flight engineer, a flight attendant, and several first-class passengers were found still strapped to their seats inside the nose section when it crashed in nearby Tundergarth Field. A flight attendant was discovered alive by a local woman but died before help could arrive. It was later reported that some passengers may have remained alive briefly after the impact, and a pathologist report concluded that at least 2 of these passengers might have survived if they had received medical attention in time. One of the notable victims was Bernd Carlson, a 50-year-old UN commissioner for Namibia, which was then called Southwest Africa. He was supposed to attend the signing ceremony of the New York Accords at the UN headquarters the next day. Also on the flight were James Fuller, the CEO of Volkswagen of America, and marketing director Lou Marengo. Other well-known passengers included Irish Olympic sailor Peter Dix, rock musician Paul Jeffries, and his wife Rachel, molecular biologist Dr. Irving Seigel, and Jonathan White, a 33-year-old American accountant. Jonathan was the son of David White, an actor known for his role as Larry Tate on the TV show Bewitched. Diplomatic Security Service agents Daniel Emmett O'Connor and Ronald Albert Lariviere, along with Matthew Gannon, the CIA's deputy station chief in Beirut, and a group of US intelligence specialists were also on the flight, leading to speculation and conspiracy theories suggesting that one or more of them may have been targeted. 11 residents of Sherwood Crescent were killed when the plane's wing section struck house number 13 at over 500 miles per hour, causing a massive explosion that created a crater 154 feet long. The property was completely destroyed, and its 2 occupants were never found. A family of 4 and several other residents also perished, including 2 widows aged 82 and 81, the oldest victims of the disaster. Father Patrick Keegans, Lockerbie's Catholic priest, was preparing to visit friends with his mother when the explosion occurred. His house at 1 Sherwood Crescent was the only one on the street that remained intact, and fortunately, both he and his mother were unharmed. In the immediate aftermath, many relatives of the victims travelled from the US to identify their loved ones, and volunteers from Lockerbie operated 24-hour canteens offering meals and support. They also cleaned clothing found at the site to return to families of the victims. The town displayed immense compassion and strength during this tragedy, creating lasting bonds with the victims' relatives. A massive international investigation was launched following the crash. Chief Constable John Boyd of the Dumfries and Galloway Constabulary oversaw the investigation, which was immediately treated as a criminal act. The search area was divided into 6 initial zones, and Boyd established 3 phases for the investigation. 1. Recover all victims by midnight on December 24th. 2. Collect all aircraft wreckage within 2 to 3 weeks. 3. Prepare for a prolonged inquiry. Although phases 1 and 2 took longer than Boyd had estimated, the initial part of the investigation has since been regarded as a model for similar scenarios. By December 1989, investigators had logged nearly 1.5 million vehicle miles, taken over 35,000 photographs, and recovered approximately 16,000 items of property. More than 80% of the plane itself was recovered and reassembled at the Air Accidents Investigation Branch facilities in Farnborough, England. A breakthrough in the investigation occurred when forensic experts identified a fragment of a timer embedded in a piece of clothing found in the wreckage. This timer was traced back to Mabo, a Swiss company that manufactured the MST-13 timer used in the bomb. Further analysis revealed that the bomb had been concealed inside a cassette player, which was hidden within a suitcase checked in at Malta's Lucca airport. The suitcase was then transferred via Air Malta flight KM180 to Frankfurt Airport, and subsequently onto Pan Am Flight 103 at Heathrow Airport. Investigators from the US Federal Aviation Administration found that no emergency procedures were initiated in the cockpit prior to the crash. The cockpit voice recorder, located in the tail section of the aircraft, was recovered by police searchers within 24 hours, and although no distress call was captured, a 180 millisecond hissing noise was audible just before the explosion that destroyed the aircraft's communications system. The explosion in the aircraft's hold was intensified by uncontrolled decompression of the fuselage, which created a significant pressure difference between the interior and exterior of the aircraft. This pressure change disrupted the elevator and rudder control cables, causing the fuselage to pitch downward and to the left. Investigators from the Air Accidents Investigation Branch of the British Department for Transport concluded that the nose of the aircraft was blown off and separated from the main fuselage within 3 seconds of the bomb exploding. The nose cone was initially held on by a band of metal resembling the lid of a can, but it eventually sheared off and flew upwards and backwards to the right. The detached nose struck the No. 3 engine and landed some distance away on a hill in Tundergarth. The fuselage continued its descent until it reached an altitude of 19,000 feet, at which point its dive became nearly vertical. Due to extreme flutter, the vertical stabilizer disintegrated, resulting in significant yawing movements. As the forward fuselage continued to break apart, flying debris damaged both horizontal stabilizers and the rear fuselage, along with the remaining 3 engines and the fin torque box, became separated. Here is incredible animation of the mid-air explosion taken from the documentary series Air Crash Investigation, produced by Cineflix Media. The rear fuselage, parts of the baggage hold, and 3 landing gear units landed at Rosebank Crescent. The main fuselage, including the primary wing structure, crashed on Sherwood Crescent, destroying 3 homes and creating a large impact crater. The 200,000 pounds of jet fuel ignited upon impact, causing fires that consumed several additional houses. Investigators concluded that both wings landed within the crater in Sherwood Crescent, noting the complete absence of debris from the wing's primary structure found outside the crater. This reinforced the initial assessment that the entire wing structure had impacted at the main crash site. The British Geological Survey, located 14 miles from Eskdalemoor, registered a seismic event at 19:03:36, measuring 1.6 on the moment magnitude scale. This was attributed to the impact of the incident. The report indicated that the remaining wreckage, including the entire fuselage, was discovered as a single piece in a field about 2.5 miles east of Lockerbie, located opposite Tundergarth Church, is where the wreckage, commonly depicted in media images of the incident, landed almost flat on its left side, but with a slight nose-down attitude. In the months leading up to the tragedy, several warnings were issued by various terrorist groups claiming that they intended to blow up an aircraft. On December 5, 1988, the US Federal Aviation Administration received a warning that a Pan Am flight would be bombed by an individual linked to the Abu Nidal organization. This warning was circulated to embassies and US carriers, but it was not adequately addressed, and the implications of the warning were recognized only after the bombing occurred. Days before the attack, security forces across Europe were alerted by the Palestine Liberation Organization that extremists might carry out terrorist acts to disrupt ongoing dialogues between the US and the PLO. On the day of the bombing, the French Directorate General for External Security was informed by their UK counterpart, MI6, that British intelligence suspected the Libyans to be behind the attack. In the aftermath of the bombing, various groups claimed responsibility through calls to news outlets in the US and Europe. One caller, claiming to be from the Guardians of the Islamic Revolution, alleged that the attack was retaliation for the US downing of Iran Air Flight 655 the previous July. Another caller, representing the Islamic Jihad organization, stated that the bombing was intended to commemorate Christmas, while a separate caller suggested that the Israeli intelligence service, Mossad, was involved. However, in 2003, amid international sanctions, Muammar Gaddafi took responsibility for the Lockerbie bombing, providing compensation to victims' families while insisting that he did not personally order the attack. However, on February 22, 2011, during the Libyan civil war, former Minister of Justice Mustafa Abdul Jalil told the Swedish newspaper Expressen that Gaddafi had ordered the bombing and claimed to possess documents to prove it, which he was willing to submit to the International Criminal Court. In 1991, the United States and Scotland issued arrest warrants for two Libyan nationals, Abdelbasset Ali al-Megrahi and Lamin Khalifa Fhimah, both of whom were alleged to be members of the Libyan intelligence service. The charges stemmed from evidence suggesting that the bombing was a state-sponsored act of terrorism. After years of diplomatic negotiations and United Nations sanctions, Libya agreed to surrender the two suspects for trial. In 2000, a special Scottish court was convened at Camp Zeist in the Netherlands to hear the case. The trial began in May 2000 and concluded in January 2001. The prosecution presented evidence that the bomb had been placed in a suitcase at Lucca Airport in Malta. This suitcase was then transferred to Frankfurt and loaded onto Pan Am Flight 103. Inside the suitcase was a Toshiba radio cassette player rigged with an MST-13 timer, which caused the explosion over Lockerbie. In January 2001, the court convicted Abdelbasset Ali al-Megrahi of 270 counts of murder, sentencing him to life imprisonment. Lamin Khalifa Fhimah was acquitted of all charges and subsequently released. The verdict provoked mixed reactions, with some hailing it as a step toward justice, while others questioned the sufficiency of the evidence and the fairness of the trial. In 2009, al-Megrahi was released from prison by the Scottish Government on compassionate grounds after being diagnosed with terminal prostate cancer. He returned to Libya, where he died in 2012. Despite the conviction of al-Megrahi, many victims' families and governments continued to seek accountability for the bombing. In December 2020, on the 32nd anniversary of the tragedy, the US Department of Justice charged a third individual, Abu Aguila Masoud Khair al-Marimi, in connection with the bombing. Masoud, a former Libyan intelligence officer, was accused of being the bomb maker responsible for constructing the device that brought down Flight 103. In December 2022, Masoud was taken into US custody and appeared in a Washington, D.C. federal courthouse, where he faced charges related to the bombing. His trial is scheduled to begin in May 2025, offering a renewed opportunity for justice for the victims and their families. The Lockerbie bombing had a profound impact on global aviation security. In the aftermath, international aviation authorities implemented stricter security measures, including enhanced screening of baggage and passengers, improved intelligence sharing among countries, and the establishment of more rigorous protocols for handling unaccompanied luggage. The tragedy also led to significant changes in US and international law. In 1992, the US government passed the Aviation Security Improvement Act, which mandated the installation of explosive detection systems in airports and required airlines to adopt more stringent security procedures. The legacy of Pan Am Flight 103 continues through various memorials and initiatives dedicated to the victims. Syracuse University, where many of the students aboard the flight were enrolled, established the Remembrance Scholarship Program to honour their memory. The university also holds an annual Remembrance Week, which culminates in a ceremony on December 21st, the anniversary of the bombing. In Lockerbie, the town continues to host events and memorial services to remember the victims and educate future generations about the impact of terrorism. The Lockerbie Memorial Cairn in Arlington National Cemetery, Virginia, memorializes the 270 lives lost in the terrorist bombing. Consisting of 270 blocks of red Scottish sandstone, the cairn was a gift from the people of Scotland to the people of the United States. Families of the victims have played a crucial role in advocating for justice and promoting peace. Organisations such as Victims of Pan Am Flight 103 have worked tirelessly to ensure that the memory of their loved ones is preserved and that the lessons learned from this tragedy continue to inform global counter-terrorism efforts. While significant strides have been made in the pursuit of justice and the enhancement of aviation security, the grief and consequences of that fateful night in December 1988 continue to affect the lives of families, communities and nations. The downing of Pan Am Flight 103 was not just a criminal act, it was a devastating human tragedy that exposed vulnerabilities in global security systems and underscored the necessity for international cooperation in confronting terrorism. For the families of the 270 victims, the road to justice has been long and complex. Though Abdelbasseh al-Megrahi was convicted, doubts about the full truth of the bombing persist. The recent arrest and upcoming trial of Abu Aguila Mas'ud offer hope to many that additional answers may emerge. Regardless of the outcomes, the pain of loss and the call for accountability remain as strong as ever. Beyond the courtroom, the memory of the victims lives on in the hearts of their loved ones and in tributes scattered across the globe. From the peaceful town of Lockerbie to the rolling hills of Arlington National Cemetery and to the halls of Syracuse University, their names will not be forgotten. Pan Am Flight 103 changed the way the world views aviation safety, international crime and diplomatic responsibility. It compelled governments to re-examine policies, encouraged new levels of vigilance, and illustrated that terrorism, wherever it strikes, affects humanity as a whole. As we reflect on this tragedy decades later, we are reminded of the importance of remembrance, the pursuit of truth, and the enduring strength of communities united in grief and resilience. The legacy of Pan Am Flight 103 is not only a story of loss, but also one of determination to honour the victims, to seek justice, and to ensure that such a tragedy never happens again. Prior to the September 11th attacks in 2001, the Lockerbie tragedy was the deadliest terrorist attack against American civilians and is considered the deadliest act of terrorism in the history of the United Kingdom. Our thoughts are with everyone affected.